My name is Evan Cross, and I fly airplanes for a living. It's a job that demands calm, focus, and an eye for the smallest detail. Most days, flying is long stretches of routine, broken by brief moments where every second matters. I thought this was just another deadhead trip home, but from the moment I reached gate C12, I could feel trouble brewing. Her name was Karen Lane. Back home, she was the tyrant president of our HOA, wielding bylaws like weapons. At the airport, she was just another passenger, though one who carried her entitlement like armor. She was trying to take my seat, 2A in first class, even though her ticket clearly said 3B. She leaned over the counter, demanding the gate agent fix the mistake, claiming medical reasons, elite status, and whatever else she thought might work. Brenda, the agent, had the patience of a saint. She held her ground until Karen finally stormed off, her glare scanning the boarding area like a searchlight until it landed on me. She didn't know who I was, and I intended to keep it that way. When we boarded, I settled quietly into 2A. Karen ended up right behind me across the aisle in 3B, sighing theatrically as she shoved her oversized bag under the seat. I felt that quiet whisper in my gut telling me this wasn't over. Karen wasn't the kind of person who let go of things. Then another man entered the cabin, a sharp suit, polished shoes, and a heavy gold signet ring that flashed under the lights. He pretended to be clumsy, bumping into a young flight attendant named Sarah near the galley. For a split second, his hand dipped into her tote bag. Smooth, practiced, too precise to be an accident. Something had been planted. He wasn't even seated up front. He vanished toward the back, but my mind started connecting dots. Earlier, my wife Lena had texted me. Karen was pushing for an emergency HOA vote that night, tied to a developer who wanted to throw up a massive apartment complex in our quiet neighborhood. Karen was his champion. He needed her on the ground. The slick man with the ring matched the description of that developer's fixer. Suddenly, the flight felt less like coincidence and more like a setup. We climbed into the sky, turbulence rocking us as a storm line built ahead. Karen ordered a mimosa, started live streaming, and when the seatbelt light came on, she suddenly discovered her seatmate was having a medical emergency. She shrieked for help, fanned him with a safety card, and narrated the drama for her online audience. Flight attendants did their jobs with calm efficiency, but the timing was too perfect. Within minutes, the captain announced we were diverting to the nearest major airport. I already knew which one. It was home, the exact place Karen needed to be. As we bucked through the storm, I heard a faint metallic click from an overhead bin 2 rows ahead. Not the firm latch of a locked bin, but the weak snap of one left ajar. Another bump, and the door flexed. My stomach dropped. That was Sarah's bag, the one the fixer had touched. I moved quietly to the galley, told the lead flight attendant Maria what I'd heard. She checked, and when the bin swung open, her face went pale. The tote sat inside. She shut it firmly, then picked up the interphone and used the clipped code of emergencies. Level 2 threat. Possible device. The crew acted quickly, moving the bag with solemn precision to the least risk bomb location at the rear galley. They built a buffer of soft luggage and wet blankets, exactly by the book. Watching them work was like watching a well-drilled team in the middle of chaos. Passengers had no idea, except one man in row 14 who wasn't reading his paperback anymore. His eyes tracked the bag with predator focus. The air marshal. I felt a flicker of relief. We weren't alone. Meanwhile, turbulence threw a heavy service cart loose, and it barreled down the aisle straight toward a child who had slipped his belt off. I didn't think. I threw myself into the cart, stopping it with my shoulder before it crushed the boy. His mother sobbed thanks while I strapped him in tight. Maria gave me a look of fierce gratitude. I just nodded. Protecting people was part of the job, uniform or not. We descended into the storm, lightning flashing, rain hammering the fuselage. The crew isolated the threat, the cockpit locked down, the air marshal on edge. My phone buzzed again. Lena sent frantic updates from the ground. The HOA meeting was live, the developer bragging that Karen would be there to cast the deciding vote. He laughed about the minor medical diversion that guaranteed her arrival. The plane touched down hard but steady. We taxied not to the terminal, but to a remote gate swarming with emergency vehicles. As the door opened, the fixer made his move, pushing past the attendants onto the jet bridge. The air marshal followed fast. I blocked the aisle just in case he tried to turn back. Cornered, he drew a thin knife, desperate to create chaos. My roller bag was in my hand. I dropped my shoulder and slammed it into his wrist. The knife clattered to the floor. In seconds, the marshal and airport police had him cuffed and face first against the wall. He howled in pain, then turned his rage on Karen. "This was your plan! You set me up!" he screamed before being dragged away. Every phone in the cabin recorded it. Karen's face went chalk white. Agents swarmed the plane. Maria pointed them toward me, and I gave a detailed account of what I'd seen: the bump, the planted bag, the sound of the latch. When I told Agent Miller I was a pilot, she nodded with understanding. The bomb squad removed Sarah's tote, later confirming it held a high-power RF jammer. Not a bomb, but dangerous enough to disrupt communications and force a diversion. Perfect for ensuring Karen's arrival, and it had been purchased by a shell company tied directly to our HOA. Karen tried to salvage her story on her live stream, pretending to be a victim of airline incompetence. But Miller shut her down. Then Lena sent me the final pieces. Security footage showing Karen meeting the fixer that morning, a catering receipt for a victory party paid with HOA funds, and a chat log where her allies bragged Karen would find a way to make the vote. When I handed it all to Miller, she looked at Karen with cold certainty. Minutes later, the airline's station chief banned her for life. Then came the handcuffs, the Miranda rights, and the sight of the HOA queen being marched off the plane to a chorus of passenger applause. By the time I was released from giving statements, it was nearly midnight. Lena picked me up, and together we went straight to the community clubhouse where the emergency meeting was still in chaos. With Karen gone, her allies crumbled. My neighbor Mike stood up, voice steady, as he called for a vote to remove her as president. It passed unanimously. The zoning variance was postponed, and when the full vote finally came weeks later, it failed by a landslide. The developer's empire collapsed under lawsuits and indictments. The fixer cut a deal. Karen was convicted on multiple charges and sentenced to 10 years. Life in Cedar Creek changed. The absurd HOA rules vanished. Kids played basketball in their driveways, gardens bloomed in every color, and yes, even a tacky gnome or two reappeared. The neighborhood felt lighter, freer. One evening not long after, Lena and I stood on our deck watching the sunset, the smell of burgers on the grill, kids laughing in the distance. She looked at me and asked what I'd really done on that jet bridge. I flipped a burger, smiled, and said, "I just solved a problem." Because that's the truth. I wasn't a hero. I was just a man trying to protect his home, paying attention when the wrong kind of detail whispered that something was off. And sometimes that's enough.